long have you been the manager here? You know, just I've been the manager, or I'm sorry, the owner. We'll just start with the first thing. How long have you been the owner here?
6 years.
Did you come in here to have a few beers, or had you already heard about it beforehand? How did you discover the Rathskeller?
Well, I discovered the Skeller in 1970 when I was a senior in college. So I had lots of beers here. I worked here when I was in graduate school. So the Skeller was always my favorite bar. It's always my favorite.
What made you finally decide to own it?
Stupidity. It was just coincidence, that's all it was. Simply coincidence. I knew the guy who owned it before. He was selling it. He mentioned it one night, talked about it, we ended up buying it. That's simply it, period.
Just a few memories of this place first as a customer, just being in here when you were a student. Take your time.
Well, there's lots of people. I mean, it all involves people. There's one of the managers here years ago. His name was Jerry Walther. Got arrested for having betting slips in the bread box back in the kitchen. There's a guy here who tended bar for a long time. His name was Bob Karaman. He used to do things like throw glasses at the customers leaving if they didn't leave him big enough tip. It was Bob Albright, who was the manager here for a long time. Used to call him Ollie. He's a big guy, Fu Manchu, bald. There's all kinds of stories about him. Just for one, there was a sports writer, Penn State graduate. His name's Terry Now, small guy. He was in Providence, I think, Rhode Island now. And he said something disparaging about Ollie's wife one day. So Ollie picked him up and hung him on one of those dowels that serve as coat hooks. Just lots of stuff like that.
How about some as the owner now? I mean, some of your customers recently that
in terms of memories?
Yeah, things that stand out.
Nothing like that, really. It's just the people. You know, you just simply remember certain people. And obviously you get to know quite a few people because they come and they go, and get to see them come back on football weekends and get to see them come back during Arts Festival. And, as far as specific memories, you know, most of the stuff you remember is bad stuff from your perspective, stuff that's just a hassle or a pain on the rear end or whatever. You know.
Any hassles? Tell us.
Continually. Just stuff that comes with the territory. You know, disagreements. People with bad IDs, people who you feel are too loaded to come in. I mean, you name it. People who break bottles, just on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's really not any glamour to it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Let's see. What do you think makes people come back to the Rathskeller? I mean, people probably wouldn't go back to Players in a few years, but what's it about?
Because it's been here. It's the tradition. It's been here for 50. This is what, 91? This is the 58th year. It's one of the few places in State College. It's basically, at least this part of it where we're sitting, is basically unchanged since it opened. You can call it what you want. I mean, some people call it dump. Some people, they call it all kinds of things. But the place does have some character, and that's just something that gets acquired over the years. You know, it's not something you you make, and I don't want to disparage any other place, but an establishment like Players, it certainly has its assets, but Players is not a place that's ever going to have any character. You know, it might have, quote, atmosphere, unquote, but it's artificial, it's contrived. You know, you can't get more down earth than concrete floors and the wood and that's, I think, why people come back, you know, because of the tradition and because you can have certain memories here that you can't have elsewhere. You know, there's other bars that fit in a category too, in both categories. People go back to the first for partly the same reason. They come back here, or they might go back to the Gaff because they've been there for oldies nights when they were in school. The newer places like Players, the Saloon, the Gingerbread Man, no one's going to go back there.
How many cases of beer did you finish last year in the case study? Do you remember?
943. It's a lot of beer.
Tell us about the case study and kind of how it came about.
People started buying cases in here. Probably been about 20 years or so. And the way that happened, it was on this is when Dean Smith owned the bar. It was on a football weekend, and the Skeller sold the ponies, and everybody would buy the ponies too for, at the time, I think it was 35 cents or something like that. It's a true story. An alumnus was bringing ponies back to a table like where we were sitting, and he was buying them 10 and 12 at a time. And rather than having to carry them through the crowd, he asked Dean if he could just have a case. Some sheer convenience, just because the case was easier to bring to the table than it was trying to handle all these pony bottles. And Dean said, sure. And that innocently is how cases started being sold down here. It was not, nobody planned it, nobody thought it would be a great idea. That's just the way it happened. The case study thing was done by John O'Connell, who was the prior owner. That started probably in 81 maybe, so that's not that old, maybe 82. When he was going through the Guinness Book of Records, there was a bar in Germany that was in there for having the record for most cases of beer sold in one day, and he thought, well, we can do better than that, and that's how it started. That's exactly how it started. And so we just continue to do it every year. The only difference is now we have a charitable function with it. We just don't do it for the sake of doing it anymore. It becomes a little bit harder to do every year.
That's great. That's my next question. All right. What is this is kind of like related to what you said before. What is so different about this bar compared to, say, the first of the Gaff, which people think are really old, as old as
It's really character, I think, is the best word to describe it. You know, believe it or not, the second oldest place in State College to sell alcohol is the Tavern, and that was 48, so that was 15 years after the Skeller opened. The next oldest bar that's still existing, believe it or not, is the Lion's Den, which opened in the 50s sometime. I don't know exactly when, late 50s, I think. Although that was not the Lion's Den when it opened, and since its opening, it's been obviously changed. If you've been in there, it's not like it was when it opened. You know, it was. So when you say character, it just has to do with you couldn't go out and make a place like this, for instance. You know, if you wanted to build a bar in State College, you couldn't build this place. You could build another Gingerbread Man, you could build another Players, you could build God knows what, but you can't build this. And I think there's an authenticity to this place. And I think when you come in here when it's busy, if you just look at the nature of the crowd, generally in here I think it's a little more varied than it is in some other places. And I think the reason for that is because this place does not encourage what I would call phoniness. You know, I mean, in here you are what you are, period, that's it. You know, you don't have to turn your collar up, you don't have to be dressed a certain way, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. You know, you don't have I don't think you have to conform to anything in here. You don't have to be, quote, cool, unquote. And I really think that's the allure of the place, and I think it always will. It always will be. I mean, this is one of the few landmarks left, and it really is a landmark that's been associated with Penn State, and is pretty much unchanged. This part of the bar is pretty much unchanged from when it opened in '33. You can't find any other place in State College like that. The first is only a little bit over 20 years old. The Gaff is only 20 years old, which is really not that old. It's nothing compared to this. You get people coming in here who graduate in the 30s once in a while, who come back and just to see what the place looks like, and much to their delight, it looks pretty much the same way it looked when they were here. So I think that's, in a nutshell, that's pretty much it.
I don't know if you can answer this, but
Probably.
when you retire, how would you want to remember this place? If you retired,
I'd probably like to remember it as this may sound kind of strange, but the Skeller, I don't know. I probably was attracted to Skeller as a student for the same reasons I just mentioned. From the time I was a senior in college until the time I finished graduate school, which was a space of about 5 years, I spent a lot of time in this bar. Not necessarily to drink all the time, but just as a sort of a focal point of some of my socializing. And this place was always like a second home to me. Don't ask me why, but it always was. And perhaps part of it is because I could do pretty much what I wanted to in here. If I wanted to sit out here and have a beer, I could have a beer. If I wanted to shoot pool, I could shoot pool. If I wanted to listen to somebody play music, I'd go back and listen to them. I think I will remember it probably as a second home. It's funny, but the only bar in town, of course I've been in every bar in town, God knows how many times. The only bar in town I've ever really had any feeling about is this bar. And it has nothing to do with it really as a business. It just has to do with the fact of I have a lot of memories associated with this place, and so many other people have memories associated with this place. And that's how I think I'll remember it, really, when I depart, when I raise the flag and surrender, and let somebody else do it.
All right, and finally, why did they call Harry Coach Spaghetti?
Harry, I'll tell you about Harry. Harry's been coming in here since 1948, so he's been here for 42 years, I guess. Harry and Dean Smith went to high school together. And Dean Smith being not the prior owner, but the owner before the prior owner. Harry used to work here. He used to do, he's cooked here for a little while, long time ago. Did dishes. When I worked here, Harry was washing dishes. So this really more so, I mean, I say it's a second home. It's really a first home for him, and has been for a lot of years. This would have been late 60s, early 70s. Harry would always be included with anything that went on here. So in other words, if the staff had a party with a bunch of kegs or whatever, Harry would be invited. If the staff had a pig roast, Harry would come to the pig roast. It didn't make any difference. Harry was part of the place. And they used to have an intramural football team down here. In the late 60s, 70s, they'd always play IM football. And Harry he still has the shirt, he wears it once in a while that has Coach Spaghetti on it. So in order to keep Harry involved in the goings-on of the staff at the Skeller, Harry was made Coach Spaghetti. So that's where it comes from. There's a lot of Harry stories, obviously, in 40 years, but that's where the Coach Spaghetti came from.
That's a good one. out of 4,000. It's hard to see. It's probably less than that, actually. They're still playing. We had nothing going in yet.
I know they weren't going in yet because they're waiting for the ceremony. Special forces had it surrounded.
Why do you come here when you could go to like some place like Players or even the First or something like that? What makes this special?
I don't know. I like it here. Like, it's the atmosphere, the people. The beer's cheap. It's kind of like scummy, but it's kind of better that way. Like, you don't have to worry about being all nice and dressed up, and you can just come here and you really just come here and get really drunk and have fun. It's not like, it doesn't matter like what you look like or who you are. Anyone can just come here and have a good time.
Do you have any any particular moments here that you can remember? People being
Yeah, lots of times. Like, I was here on my 21st birthday. I was here just like last week. I was here. There was a huge fight like right over here, and all the bouncers like crushed this guy. All kinds of fun times here.
That's perfect. Do you want to go? Okay.
It's on the going out to the bar kick, and what makes this place different from the going into another place would be just the fact that going to a couple other bars in town, which I won't mention, you have to conform to the crowd there. You have to dress up. You have to sit down. You have to act in a way that's gonna coincide with the way the rest of the crowd at that bar acts, and it's kind of uncomfortable. And what's really fun about going to bars for me is just coming in and sitting down and drinking beer and having a good time and going down with friends. And a place like this, it's you can go in and not care who's here. You don't have to worry about people if you're going to conform with the people that are here or anything like that. There's always a good time here. It's also a nostalgic place. My dad went to school here, and so did my mom, and they always tell me stories about when they came to Skeller when they were young. And I just recently, last semester, my dad and I drank in here together. I thought that was kind of neat. So it's a place for like people to go, students, and people that have been here in the past to go. It's a lot of fun.
Why do you think it's a tradition?
It's a tradition because it's part of the structure of State College. I mean, if you look around, State College isn't a thriving metropolis, but most of the areas around, most of the buildings and most of the structures in town are sort of dilapidated, and this bar sort of fits in with the whole town more than I think any other bar does. And I think when people come back, they think of the times that they had back here, because this was probably one of the more thriving bars back then.
Is this okay? All right. What makes the Rathskeller special as compared to places like the First or Players, or what's the tradition behind it? Maybe?
Probably because it's remained pretty much unchanged. As long as Penn State students have been coming here, the Skeller is pretty much the same, where others seem to modernize. And I've noticed anywhere you go in the country, if you tell somebody you're from Penn State, they always ask you, oh, have you been to the Rathskeller? Everybody knows the Rathskeller. Everybody wants to be here. If you come here on a special weekend, you know you're probably going to see somebody from years ago.
What's it like being a barmaid at the Rathskeller?
I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, though. A lot of very busy nights. It's very demanding, to get everybody served, because everybody gets pretty impatient. But it's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of neat people, hear a lot of good jokes. So I enjoy it.
What's an index mean?
We are Thursday, March 14th. Interview with H. Dean Smith, former owner, manager of All-American Rathskeller. And what years were you there at the Rathskeller?
Well, I went in on January the 3rd, 1951, and I retired on July 1st, 1980.
How did you first hear about the place? Were you just from around
The original owner was named Doggy Alexander. Carey was his right name, but they called him Doggy. And he was looking for a bartender or a manager. And I was working at another bar in the vicinity, and he came to see me one night and asked me to stop up to see him. I went to visit him on the 3rd day of January after New Year's, and he said he gave me an offer of, I think it was $35 a week, and with the incentive of making more money if on commission if I did well. And he introduced me to an old colored cook in the kitchen called Spider. Edgar J. Clark was his right name. But Spider, he introduced me to him because Spider was more or less running it with student help. And then he took me out behind the bar and he showed me how to draw a draft. And he had a head on it about 2 inches, and it was, at the time, it was 10 cents for the draft. And here's how you ring it up on the cash register. He showed me, and he says, now you can go talk to Spider, I'll see you. And he walked out the door and went to Florida for 3 months. And that's how I started at the Rathskeller.
So you started in 1951 as an employee for Doggy.
Right.
And I heard, is it true that he once said to the people he hired, I'll hire you for $35 a week and all the beer you can steal?
Well, that was pretty much the case when I started, because the first bartender that came to work that day when I was working, just to help me, was marking down little digits on a piece of paper. And I says, what's that? He says, well, I ring up 2, and then a 3rd one I don't ring up. I keep that for myself. And that's the way they really did it in those days. And we had all student help. It was all part-time student help.
And what's the story behind serving Rolling Rock there, and how long?
Well, that came years later, but draft beer was our business, and we sold very little bottled beer. And I set 2 different records on selling draft beer. I had 5 spigots of draft on tap, and the first Navy home football game, homecoming at Penn State, started on Friday. I sold 27 halves of Schlitz beer, and then on Saturday, the day of the game, I sold 25 halves of Schlitz beer. And they gave me a citation from the Schlitz Brewery for selling the most beer in any one location. And I went to Tampa, Florida, but I paid my own way, but they gave me the red carpet treatment at the brewery in Tampa and Busch Gardens and the whole bit down there.
Is the Skeller the only bar in the country that
The Skeller is now the oldest licensed bar in State College. Now, there was one at the time that started also in 1933. It was Jim Harris's pool room over on Allen Street that had a bar downstairs. But the Skeller was initially called the oldest licensee and the oldest bar in State College. It was right after Prohibition in 1933 when Doggy started with a half-barrel beer sitting up on the bar and pitchers of beer mostly, and then when he ran out, he closed up.
It was like a speakeasy.
Yes, very much so, and a lot of free. Well, Spider, the colored cook, was upstairs cooking, and then he'd come downstairs to work for Doggy. And he, in turn, bought a ham and a big block of Swiss cheese. But the time that was all, he didn't have enough money to buy another one, so he wasn't. They were eating it. The help was eating it, or we were giving it away. You know, they were. I wasn't. That was when they first started in '33.
When did they first start selling beer by the case?
Well, then what happened, this went on, draft beer, and all the jocks hung out in the Skeller, and the gymnastic teams and the lacrosse teams. They all hung out in the Skeller, and it was actually pretty much of a sports bar for years. Well, then this all changed. I think it was after turn to Rip Engel leaving and Joe Paterno coming in, and Joe was stricter and set stricter rules, and a lot of the bars were off limits downtown for the football players, and same way with the other sports. But that wasn't the real reason, I don't think. It seemed then it went from different stages. The Skeller went from the Second World War guys, you know. They were good drinkers, and they got 110 a month, and they got part-time work, and I had a lot of them work for me, but they in turn drank bottled beer a good bit. They had more money, you know. And what happened, then that died out a little bit, and then the fraternity, the Blue Blazer and the Loafers, they come in, you know. And it was a great fraternity hangout for years. And I cut ribbons for a lot of fraternity parties that they had, senior parties or graduating parties, and I'd more or less oversee it on the side to help them because they were all good friends. And then we went from that stage into the, we called it the beatnik stage, the long hair, the beards, sloppy dress. We had all these stages throughout the years, you know. And it's hard to say just what started it, but it seemed like every time there was a spring break or Easter vacation or Christmas, the students would come back and they had more money than they originally had, and when they were home they drank bottled beer the whole time. Well, then they come back and they started to drink bottled beer, and my draft consumption went from, in a normal week, no football, but I mean a normal week, I probably would sell 25 to 35 halves of beer a week, and it dropped down to almost about 12. It was about 1/3 on draft beer, and bottled beer was picking up. And your margin of profit was on the draft beer. It wasn't on the bottled beer. You bought it, but you didn't make the percentage of profit. And so I could see my profit going down, and the business was the same or even better, but the profit wasn't there, and this is what it was. So I got a call from the Rolling Rock distributor and the Rolling Rock Brewery.
This was about what time?
This was in the early 70s. And they asked me if I'd be interested in going to Rolling Rock 7-ounce beers at the right price. And we had a meeting, and they gave me a good deal on what I could buy it for. And I said, well, we'll try it. You know, I got to do something to get my percentage of profit up because of the draft beer falling down and bottled beer coming up. So we started Rolling Rock. At the time, it was 15 cents a bottle, 2 for a quarter. That's how we first started, 2 bottles for a quarter. And then a group would come in, you know, of about 5 or 6, 7 guys, and plop down the corner and all order 2 Rolling Rocks, you know. And I told the waitress, we didn't have waitresses at the time. All we had was waiters back in those days. And I said, go ask them if they want a case at the table and how much. So I cut, you know, like 4 or 5 bottles off the price and served them a case at the table. Boy, they thought I had an opener for 50 cents. They brought the opener back, then I'd give them their 50 cents back. And they could just open them as they wanted right at the table. And that took off, and you won't believe it, how that started. And they just come in and, well, even 2 guys come in and order a case of Rolling Rock and sit there and drink a case. And it just picked up and got bigger and bigger. And then the first record we set was 900 and some cases in one day. And then I had left, and then from then on, they beat that. I think it's up around 1,100 and some or 1,200 and some cases in one day. Set a record, but I set the first record with the brewery for selling the most Rolling Rock in any bar in the country. There was a bar in Ohio that was tops, and I beat him by, well, something like 1,100 cases one month. And he called me on the phone. I talked to him, and he congratulated me, and that's how we started. And I took my help to the brewery several times free. We got a bus and went out and toured the brewery, and they wined and dined us for a whole day.
A lot. It seems a lot to do with the atmosphere of the place. It has like the feel of a sports bar, like you said. You know,
Yes.
and the times have changed. You know, some of the sports don't. You know, the coaches don't allow them to come in there. But the idea, the tradition of
Yeah.
the Rathskeller. You know, like if your parents went here.
Yeah.
And they say, well, when you're 21, you go there. What is it about the place, like the tradition, that makes people want to come back? I mean, like, they have new bars in State College, some that are cleaner and stuff like that, but they just don't have that, you know, what is it that they don't have that the Skeller has?
Well, that's what it is, I think, is basically tradition, because their fathers and mothers and all, see, in those days, there were very few bars. And Rathskeller was the main bar for the students. Now, there were a few other bars, but they mostly for the town people, and a lot of them were just like for the professors who didn't go to the Skeller or things like that. And I think the main point is tradition, because their friends and their parents and all that went to the Skeller, and so they have to go to the Skeller. I mean, it's no different than most of the other bars, like the First or all. But it's just that it's tradition to go to the Skeller, and the location is super. It's walking distance for most students, and they don't have to drive, and you know, they can drink more if they're walking home, and especially in the last few years when this DUI got real bad, and for a bar to be able to serve that many people without driving to it, you know, that means a lot.
Tell us a little bit, like what you said earlier about the cobwebs and all that.
Well, we were strict on our cleaning our kegs and keeping our glass shelves clean and things like that. But the general decor of the place was kind of rustic and a little dirty and cobwebby and all. And like when I was interviewed once before about the cobwebs and stuff, and how do you put up with that? And I said, well, that's what we call tradition. And the lady laughed, and that was in the article, that the Skeller had tradition.
Is it the only bar that you know of in the country that serves beer by the case?
It's the only one I ever heard of.
The only one in the country?
The only one in the country that I ever heard that sells beer at the table by the case.
And what year about did that case, that race? And
Well, I would say we got our liquor license in State College. I was president of the Tavern Association, and when we got, State College was strictly a malt beverage town for years and years. We didn't even have a liquor store. The liquor store was in Belfont. And then in 1976, we got it on the ballot with the help of the Republican Party, and we got it on the ballot to vote liquor into State College, which cost us all a certain amount of money to push the thing and help it. And we only made it by very few votes. But they said that we cut traffic fines and deaths down about 50% by allowing whiskey in State College instead of driving to Belfont and drink it and get all smoked up while you're down there, and then buy a bottle and bring it home and get in a wreck, you know. And that was really help. But I'd say about 1974 to 76, right in there, is when Rolling Rock took off. And maybe even earlier, 72 might have been a good year to say about that. I just don't have the records to say what year was the best. The first year we started with a big Rolling Rock trend in bottled beer, but it was in the early 70s.
What are some of your fondest memories of the place? Some of the things that really stick out as like they were either really funny or something just that went totally berserk one night that, yeah, I mean, you just, stories that you'd like to tell your grandkids or tell people about.
Oh, there's so many, you know.
That's what everybody says, is there's so many.
There's so many, but, you know, there's some outstanding things, like Lenny Moore, the great football player, and played for the Baltimore Colts, and had a radio show, More with Lenny, after he left Baltimore Colts. But he was a great guy in the Skeller. He'd come in, and they'd crowd around him, you know, because he'd tell stories and all. Charlie Bloxon was a fullback on the football team. You knew Charlie probably. And then but he was big, but he couldn't remember the plays, and they had a rough time with Charlie on that. But one day, Lenny was in the Skeller, and had, like always, a gang around him, and Charlie came through the door carrying the books, you know, and he had a pile of books, and Lenny broke down laughing, you know, and Charlie came over, and I thought Charlie was going to tear him apart. And he asked him, "What's the matter with you, man?" And Lenny says, "Charlie, you carry the books, and I'll carry the ball." And just memories like that, and some of the football memories was with Mike Reed, who he'd come in the back room a lot of times and sat and honky-tonked the piano. Now he's a great musician. Jesse Arnell, he'd come in the Skeller a good bit. I think he's on the board now at the university. He's a trustee. But Jesse Arnell is one of the greatest basketball players that ever come out of Penn State. And that's the sports end of it. But we had a couple come in the Skeller and got married. They got married in the Skeller on top of an old shuffleboard machine. The hand shuffleboard, they stood up on that and got married on that shuffleboard right in the Skeller. There's just so many, you know, that some great people, just great people. I spent 29 years there with, I think, the greatest people in the world, the students.
I read somewhere where they interviewed a soldier in World War II during the war, and they asked, and I don't know if you could say, you know, if you could just tell her or tell the camera, did he say, like, if the reporter asked him, if there's anywhere in the world you'd rather be than in this war, where would it be? And he said, "I'd like to be in the All-American
Rathskeller." Yeah.
He did say that.
Yes. Yeah, that came through to us. I can't remember who it was anymore, but you'd be surprised. All over the world, you run into a Penn State person, and the first thing you know, they say, "Is this Rathskeller still there?" You know, I don't think anybody graduated from Penn State that hadn't been to the Skeller at least once. You know, and that thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the years.
Could you say that? Like, could you tell the story about the soldier for us? Or all you got to do is say it so we can use it. Could you just say that a soldier was interviewed during World War II and they asked him? Could you just say that for us?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it was World War II, and I don't know whether it was CBS or what, maybe radio station that was interviewing the soldier. And I don't even know what part of the world he was in, but he was in uniform, and they interviewed him and asked him where he'd like to be if he wasn't here. Where would you sooner be if you weren't here right now? And he said, at the All-American Rathskeller at Penn State University. The Carmen Basilio, the boxer that visited us, he was a great guy, and then he spent some time in there. He was working for Genesee Brewing Company, and he started to push Genesee bottled beer in this area, and he paid us a couple of visits. We had some real outstanding people come, and still today, some of the old boxing team, they have a meeting here every year, and some of the ones are still living. They come in, and there's a picture in the back of the Skeller of the boxers, and they come and look and see if their picture's still there. You know? I mean, and these are outstanding gentlemen. I had guys work for me that were working on their masters or whatever, and graduated. One guy in particular, this is a kind of a funny story. His name was Jim Masterson, and he would come down once a week. He was a very, very studious guy, but he'd come down once a week and stand up at the end of the bar out from the ladies' restroom door and just stand there till he got smoked. He got loaded, and he did it very quickly and draft beer, maybe 5, 6, 7 drafts, and girls would go to the restroom, and there was a clock right above, and he'd say to the girl, he said, "Pardon me, what time is it?" And she'd turn around, and she said, "Well, there's the clock," and he'd pinch her on the butt, and then she'd haul off and hit him, and I caught him doing this a couple times, and it really ticked me off, and I went over and talked to him. Jim at the time was probably 23 years old, 24. He's working on his master's or his doctor's. And I said, tell you what I'm going to do. I said, how about coming down here and see me tomorrow? So he did. He came down to see me the next day, thinking I was going to bar him or put him out or something. And I gave him a job as a bartender. It turned out to be one of the best bartenders I ever had. And he never did that again. Super guy, and he ended up, he's vice president of a big chemical company in New Jersey today. I still hear from him.
Tell us a little bit about Coach Spaghetti.
Now, Spaghetti, he was a tradition at the Skeller. He went along with the cobwebs and everything else, but Spaghetti was a local boy, born in Millheim. His father was principal of school. And Spaghetti, I played soccer against Spaghetti. I went to Center Hall High School, and he went to Millheim. And he has a scrapbook with our pictures in and all. And he, in his sophomore year in high school, he was an All-American soccer player. His dad was principal of the school. And in his junior year, he was All-American. And then he dropped out of school and started drinking and drank all his life. And ended up at State College. And he did work at the university for a while as a cook in the kitchen, but he couldn't leave the alcohol alone and got the best of him. So he started to hang out in the Skeller, so I hired him as a dishwasher in the Skeller because I knew him, all my life. And I fired him 5 times. It seemed like every time there was a home football game, he'd come into work drunk in the morning, and the days I needed him most, and I'd fire him, and then about following Wednesday or Thursday, he'd come to the back door and beg to come back, and I'd hire him back. And today he's still a tradition at the Skeller. He sits there at the bar. He cut down his drinking quite a lot, but I guess he had to health-wise. But he was a character.
Stop for a second. I'll get some of these pictures. Tell us what you get.
There's a picture here of one of our play spats that we put out at lunchtime. After I took over the kitchen there in the early 60s, you might say, we went into the food business real good at lunch, but no dinners, just lunch and then all evening with sandwiches and French fries and so forth. We had 4 different kinds of homemade soups. I'd started to make the soups, but we did so well that I was able to hire, he graduated from Penn State in engineering, but he was a hell of a cook, and he hired him, and he did a great job for me. Lunch, we put tablecloths on the table at lunchtime, red and white checker tablecloths or blue and white. Put the placemats down. People.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Where, do you want me to
Just start back again.
Start back again? Okay, this is a picture of one of our placemats we had at the Skeller. Like I say, our food business picked up so great at lunchtime and, well, all afternoon with homemade soups and sandwiches that people really came from all over, businessmen, secretaries, clerks, and everybody came to the Skeller for lunch. And we put out placemats on top of the tablecloths, and really nice appearance. And Dr. John Oswald came to the Skeller one day for lunch, and this is a picture of the placemat. He autographed it for us. I kept this ever since.
Oswald was?
President of Penn State University. This was, the original food was, this Spider, like I said, the old colored cook, had these cards printed up, and you could get a hamburger for 10 cents, or you could get a complete meal for about $1 or $1.25 of steak or whatever he had that night on a special. He would sell these students at $5, and it was $5.50 value. They saved 50 cents. Out whenever they had to finish their meal, instead of paying cash, he'd just punch this out. So it worked out real. This started back in the 60s, when draft beer was so great and all, and the Schlitz, I was working with the Schlitz Brewing Company mostly at the time because Schlitz was our favorite beer at Penn State at that time. And Schlitz with the Skeller because my name was Dean, and these Dean list cards, and they had a big plaque on the wall where they signed and they were on the Dean's list and they kept the card. They get home to their dad or mom and say, hey, I made the Dean's list, you know? And out, they come up like the graduation or homecoming or something like that, their parents, well, they always had to come to the Skeller and see Dean because they were proud that their son or daughter made the Dean's list at Penn State. Okay, this is a picture here of the outside of the Skeller when it was nice and clean and cleaned up one day. And then we also have a picture here of the inside of the Skeller, how it looked when it was cleaned up and no customers. But they always said, you know, a clean floor means that you don't have any business. Well, this is true. And today you can see that the Skeller has dirty floors and they've had a lot of business over the years. But when they poured the concrete for the floor of the Skeller, they put silver slivers in it and in the concrete. And truthfully, that concrete floor could be buffed up, that it would just shine like, oh, it was just beautiful. But it didn't last long, you know, one day's business and it was filthy again.
What about the, when was the last time you were there?
The last time I was at the Skeller? About a month ago. I try to get up once a month. You know, been a little bit lax because I've been doing a little part-time work on the side. But I try to get up once a month just to...
You still enjoy seeing, I mean, there's
Oh, yeah.
like an emotional attachment when you go
Oh,
back
yeah, yeah. And
to the kids and
every time I go up, I walk through and just look around and just reminisce a little bit. And, of course, Spaghette's usually at the bar, and I talk to Spagette a little bit. And the one girl, Pam, that's there now, she's doing a great job, I guess, and she fills me in on people that come to visit and gives me some names of people that ask about me and so forth.
what about some of the coaches that were here? Like, did they ever come down there? Have they ever been down there?
Well, the coaches, no, very seldom. Now, some guys that graduated and become coaches spent a lot of time. Dan Radakovich spent a lot of time in the Skeller. Yeah, he spent a lot of time in the Skeller, and there were a few other line coaches. And
What about Dan DeFalco?
Danny DeFalco come in. He was with the group we called the jocks. They weren't football players. They were jocks, they called them. They were rough and tough, and they respected the Skeller. They really respected the Skeller. They come in there and they enjoyed it, but they wanted looked up to a little bit because they were the kingpins. They were the football players. But then they'd leave the Skeller and go up the alley to the Mayo High. It was a bar that they started there, and they get kicked out of there every time they went in. And then they'd come back to the Skeller laughing. But they got kicked out of the Mayo High.
What about, I mean, how was the relationship, your relationship with the, like the other owners of the other bars? Y'all basically get along?
Very good, very good. That's why I was president of the Tavern Association at State College for several years, especially the year we got liquor voted in. I worked with them all, and any new bar that started always come to the Skeller, and they'd ask me, you know, what size beer we serve, what size draft, what our prices were roughly, and so they could stay in line. But the bar owners at State College really got along well, and we had a bars owners association, and we met once a month and talk over these things, you know.
From just looking at it financially, what do you think probably has been the most successful bar? Do you think the Skeller has definitely be hands down the most successful bar?
I would say there was more money made at the Skeller than any other bar in State College over the years. They sold more. They didn't sell like quality, but they sold quantity.
It's important.
Yeah.
What was this? I don't know if we can use this or not. I just wanted to ask you. Was there a bar called the Cave?
Yes.
And Tell me a little bit about that bar.
Well, the Cave was owned by, actually Russell Adams took over State College, corner room hotel, and big property owner and all. And he had this building up on the corner of Pugh Street and Beaver. And it was a house at one time, an old house, but it had a big downstairs and a big upstairs. Well, he converted it into a restaurant upstairs, and then he applied for a license for downstairs, for a beer license, and put his brother in there. Eddie Adams was his name, and Eddie opened that up and called it the Cave. It's no longer there, but that's where the parking garage went in.
You had to crawl under there to get in there?
Well, not really. It was a back entrance. At one time, years ago, there was a university, not a university law, I say more like a borough law, that if you had a bar, to open up a bar at State College, you had to go down in underneath. Well, Rathskeller is a German word for wine cellar, and that is why we were down underneath, like a wine cellar, and that's why they called it the Rathskeller. But that was outdated, and they could walk in right off the front street. But most of the original bars were all downstairs and hid underneath. Like, you didn't have to crawl in the Cave, but you had to go down around the house and like you go in a garage underneath, and that's what the Cave was there. Yeah.
How long has the back bar been there? Was that there when you were
That was the
there?
original, 1933.
So the one that you go in now and go to the back, that was the original bar?
No.
The one when you go in now, the back where the bands play now.
No.
How long has that been?
We put that in we got liquor in 76. We put that in about 75, a year before we got liquor in State College. Mr. Gensel, the owner of the building, approached us one day that if we would be interested, if he did the work, it was just a dirt cellar, if he cleaned out all out and he put it in decorations and in decor and all with the rest of the place, if we would rent it from him and add it to the Skeller, which it gave us a small increase in rent per month for him to do that, and that's what it started. And that was in about 1975. That back room, the one far back. Now the middle room was always there, where the pool tables are, and the other part.
And then the pool tables, that's where everyone sort of hang out there?
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, the TGIF on Friday was our busiest time, really, other than the football weekends. But every Friday from 3 o'clock till 8, 9 o'clock at night, it was wall-to-wall people in the Skeller. And some people would even go to class at 4 o'clock and come back at 5, but they'd hide their glass so they'd have a glass to drink out of when they come back, because we couldn't keep up with the amount of glasses and pitchers but it was just packed. It was our biggest day of the week.
Football, what is it about football season? Is it just the amount of people that are here? And
Yeah, the amount of people that are here, plus the Rathskeller was their hangout when they were going to school, and then the people come back for the game. That's where they went, the Rathskeller. And that's why it was so packed every football weekend. Homecoming was the greatest. It was, and that's what I like to go at homecoming, and I get to see guys I haven't seen for, some I still saw them the year before, but then some wouldn't get back every year, but they always come to the Skeller.
The homecoming's probably the big thing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Come back and go.
Right.
What else?
Documentary on Skeller.
Look at this.
What is it that made you want to wake up and come down here?
Well, we always hear about this, and I'm a senior, my kids are seniors, and we just want the thing to do, so we got to do it before we graduate. It's fun just hanging out with everybody. I just want to be with my friends.
Why is the Skeller different from any other bar?
So they really like lay back. You can just be yourself. Hang out.
What is it? It's like a tradition or what?
Yeah. You gotta come here. Carolyn.
What is it about the Skeller that makes you want to come back?
I think because my dad came here when he went to school, and every time he used to walk past when I was a freshman, he would just point to the Skeller, and I used to always wanted to come here because I mean it goes as far back as my dad in like '65.
So early this morning.
To drink. We always come to the Skeller and we're having a party later, so we have to come here early to drink and then come back to our party. How happy we come to the bar because we like the goods and
what is it about the tradition?
The tradition? Well, we missed it last year by a week because we weren't 21. We're making up for it. Graduate, so we can't come back next year. Besides, this is the biggest donation to charity we've ever made. Teach me stuff. Actually, what I like about the Skeller is it's like camping. You always come back, it's fun, it's relaxed, you have a good time with people and everybody's friendly.
Get footage while we can. It's okay. Video is very forgiving. Are you from Radford?
I went to transfer from Radford.
Really? I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go there in a little while. In like two or 3 weeks, I'm going to go to D-State.
What is it about the tradition of this place makes you want to come back?
I guess it'd have to be the camaraderie. I'm a little drunk. I don't know if I can say that right.
That's okay.
Everyone's hanging out, having a good time at like 10 o'clock in the morning watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's just something about it. You just can't beat it.
Well, why is it different than other bars up here?
The Skeller?
Yeah.
Well, because I can dress like this and not feel out of place. I mean, I'm not I like to wear boots and sweatshirts and ugly jeans and not have to feel like I have to impress anybody where I'm going out.